The Thunderchild sensors pinged an alert that made Lieutenant Lisa Rodriguez's coffee go cold in her hands. She blinked twice at the readout, certain her eyes were playing tricks after 18 hours of scanning empty space. "Captain Hayes." Her voice cracked slightly. "You're going to want to see this." Captain Amanda Hayes unclenched her fingers from the armrests of her command chair, where she'd been pretending not to doze. 6 months after humanity's first interstellar war, every anomalous reading could mean another Vraxian strike force. The Thunderchild, despite its bold name, was just a scout vessel, fast and stealthy, but about as durable as tissue paper against Vraxian weapons. Hayes crossed the small bridge in 3 quick strides, her magnetic boots clicking against the metal deck. The sensor display showed something massive, far larger than any human vessel. The energy signature was unmistakable. A quantum core, still active but running in low power mode. "Get me a visual," Hayes ordered, her throat suddenly dry. The main screen flickered to life, and the bridge fell silent. Against the stark backdrop of space floated a vessel of such immense proportions that the human mind struggled to process its scale. 15 kilometers of gleaming metal and crystalline structures stretched out before them, its hull bearing the distinctive angular patterns of Vraxian architecture. "Sweet Mother of Mars," Chief Engineer Jackson Cooper whispered from his station. "That's a world render." Hayes felt her pulse quicken. Everyone had heard of the World Render-class supercarriers, the crown jewels of the Vraxian fleet, but seeing one up close was different. The vessel could swallow their entire scout ship without noticing, like a whale accidentally ingesting a minnow. "Life signs?" Hayes asked, her eyes fixed on the screen. "None that I can detect," Rodriguez reported, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "But you know how their shielding works. Our sensors can barely pierce their hull plating." Security Chief James Murphy, a veteran of 3 major battles against the Vraxians, leaned forward at his weapons station. "Could be a trap. The Vraxians don't just leave their best ships floating around like space junk." Hayes nodded, but her mind was already racing with possibilities. The war had left Earth's defenses in shambles. Their orbital platforms were destroyed, their fleet reduced to a handful of combat-capable vessels. Intelligence suggested more Vraxian invasion forces were gathering, and humanity's chances of surviving another assault were slim to none. "Cooper," Hayes called out, "what's the status of that quantum core?" The chief engineer pulled up a detailed scan. "Active but stable, running at about 3% capacity. If I'm reading these signatures right, the main systems are in some kind of standby mode." Hayes made a decision. "Take us closer. Maximum stealth protocols." The Thunderchild glided forward, its advanced stealth systems, one of the few areas where humans had managed to match Vraxian technology, masking their approach. As they drew near, the true scale of the supercarrier became overwhelming. Its hull bore scars from recent battles, but the damage seemed superficial. "Ma'am," Rodriguez called out, her voice tense with excitement. "I'm picking up something weird. The ship's quantum signature. It's not exactly matching known Vraxian patterns. It's like it's evolved somehow." Before Hayes could respond, Cooper straightened at his station. "Captain, I'm reading multiple access points along the outer hull. Their docking protocols are still active. Theoretically, we could dock with it." Hayes felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders. Standard protocol demanded they report this discovery and wait for reinforcements, but reinforcements would take days to arrive, if they came at all. In days, this opportunity could vanish, either by the ship's automated systems activating some self-destruct protocol, or by the Vraxians returning to claim their property. She looked at her crew, 12 of the best specialists Earth had to offer, each hand-picked for their ability to think outside conventional boundaries. They'd survived battles against impossible odds, adapted to fight an enemy with superior technology, and learned to turn their limitations into advantages. "Rodriguez, begin docking calculations," Hayes ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of what she was considering. "Cooper, I want every scrap of data you can get about that quantum core. Murphy, scan for any active defense systems. We're not passing this up." The bridge crew exchanged glances, a mix of excitement and apprehension on their faces. They all knew what their captain was thinking. It was insane, possibly suicidal, and absolutely against every protocol in the book. It was also their only chance. "You've finally lost your mind, Amanda." Executive Officer Michael Torres stood in the Thunderchild's cramped briefing room, staring at his captain with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. The holographic display between them showed the massive Vraxian supercarrier, rotating slowly as sensor data scrolled across its surface. "Probably," Captain Hayes admitted, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "But tell me I'm wrong about this. Mike, tell me we have a better option." The rest of the crew sat or stood around the room, the gravity of the situation evident on their faces. Chief Engineer Cooper was still running calculations on his tablet, muttering under his breath about quantum harmonics and power requirements. "Let me get this straight," Torres said, pinching the bridge of his nose. "You want us, 12 humans with a scout ship, to hijack the most advanced warship ever built. A vessel designed to be operated by 50,000 Vraxians. 48,622. Cooper corrected without looking up. "That's the standard complement for a Worldrender-class carrier, according to Intel." Hayes activated another hologram, this one showing the latest intelligence report from Earth Command. 3 massive Vraxian invasion fleets, each larger than the one that had nearly wiped out humanity 6 months ago, were converging on Earth from different vectors. "We have 2 weeks, maybe 3, before those fleets arrive," Hayes said, her voice steady. "Earth's defenses are in ruins. Our remaining ships couldn't stop even one of those fleets, let alone 3. Lieutenant Rodriguez raised her hand slightly. "What about the coalition?" "The Centaurians promised support." "The Centaurians are dealing with their own Vraxian problem," Murphy answered from his corner. "And the Aldebaran Alliance is still considering our request for aid." The bitterness in his voice was palpable. Hayes gestured at the supercarrier's hologram. "This ship could turn the tide. Its weapon systems could devastate an entire fleet. Its shields could protect Earth while we rebuild. Its very existence in our hands would make the Vraxians think twice about attacking. If we can fly it," Torres countered. "If we can control its systems, if we can defend it when they come to take it back." "That's a lot of ifs, Captain." Dr. Emily Walker, who had been quietly studying the ship's neural interface schematics, looked up. "Actually, I might have an idea about the control systems. The Vraxians designed their interfaces for their own neurological patterns, but with some modification to our VR gaming rigs." "Gaming rigs?" Torres interrupted. "You want to control a supercarrier with gaming equipment?" "Why not?" Cooper chimed in, suddenly animated. "The principles aren't that different from the simulators we already use. We'd need to modify the interfaces, create some custom protocols." Hayes watched her crew as the impossible idea began to take root in their minds. She saw the moment when disbelief started to give way to possibility, when crazy began to transform into crazy enough to work. "This is still the longest of long shots," Murphy said, but his tone had shifted from skeptical to contemplative. "Even if we get control of the basic systems, we'd need to handle navigation, weapons, shields, damage control. Like the biggest multiplayer game ever," Rodriguez suggested, earning a few nervous laughs. Hayes stepped into the center of the room, her presence commanding attention. "I know what I'm asking. This is beyond anything we've ever attempted. If we fail, we'll probably die. If we succeed," she let the thought hang in the air, "we might save Earth," Torres finished quietly. "More than that," Hayes corrected. "We'd prove that humanity deserves its place among the stars. That we're not just some primitive species to be conquered or ignored." The room fell silent as the crew considered their options. Through the briefing room's small viewport, The massive silhouette of the Supercarrier loomed against the starfield, both a challenge and a promise. Cooper was the first to speak. "Well, I always wanted to see how those arrogant bastards built their quantum cores. Count me in." The neural interface modifications would take about 6 hours, Walker added, already making notes on her tablet. "Assuming we don't all get our brains fried." One by one, the crew members nodded or voiced their agreement. Even Torres, despite his reservations, gave a sharp nod. They all knew this was probably suicide, but they'd survived impossible odds before. Hayes looked at her crew, her family, and felt a fierce pride. "All right then, let's go steal ourselves a supercarrier." Murphy cracked his knuckles. "Just another day at the office, right?" "Right," Hayes agreed with a grim smile. "Just another impossible feat for humanity to check off its list." The airlock cycled with a hiss, and Chief Engineer Cooper watched the pressure gauge normalize with uncommon attention. No one had ever mentioned whether Vraxian atmospheric systems remained stable after abandonment. "Atmosphere is breathable," he announced, checking his handheld scanner. "But there's something weird about the ionization levels." Captain Hayes nodded, her pulse rifle held ready. "Murphy, take point. Walker, stay close to Cooper. Everyone else, standard search formation." The team stepped through the airlock into a corridor that seemed to stretch endlessly in both directions. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along the walls in slow waves, casting everything in an ethereal blue glow. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally in the vast space. "This is impossible," Cooper muttered, staring at his scanner. "These readings, the hull material is showing organic properties. It's like the metal itself is alive." Dr. Walker moved closer to examine the wall. "Look at these patterns. They're not random. It's almost like—" She stopped as the luminescent waves briefly intensified near her hand. "Like it's responding to our presence." "Anyone else feel that?" Rodriguez asked, rubbing her arms. "The static charge in the air." Lieutenant Kevin Anderson, their AI specialist, was already interfacing his tablet with a nearby control panel. "The ship's mainframe has been purged, but there are fragments of data still cached in the local nodes. Give me a minute to—" His voice cut off as the corridor's lighting suddenly shifted to a deep purple. A low humming filled the air, more felt than heard. "Anderson," Hayes prompted, her rifle tracking an invisible threat. "Sorry, Captain. Just found something interesting. According to these logs, the Vraxian crew abandoned ship exactly 72 hours ago. They were running from something." Murphy snorted. "Vraxians don't run. Not from anything." "These ones did," Anderson insisted, his fingers flying over the tablet. "There's a recurring phrase in the logs. Translates roughly to consciousness contamination." Cooper's scanner beeped urgently. "Captain, we've got a bigger problem. The ship's quantum core is running a diagnostic cycle. When it completes, which will be in about 71 hours, all systems will reset to factory defaults." "Can we stop it?" Hayes asked. "Maybe, if we can access the engineering control center. But that's 50 decks up and 2 kilometers aft, in a ship designed to have transport pods and internal shuttles running constantly." Hayes checked her tactical display, where a 3-dimensional map of their known surroundings was slowly building. "Then we better start walking. Rodriguez, mark our route. Walker, keep scanning these biological changes. Anderson, download every scrap of data you can find. Murphy, watch our backs." "Already on it, Captain." They moved through the vessel's cavernous interior, their lights illuminating spaces designed for a crew of thousands. Empty mess halls stretched for hundreds of meters. Recreation areas the size of football fields lay silent. Everywhere, the walls pulsed with that strange bioluminescence. "Look at this," Walker called out, examining a section of wall where the metal had formed intricate, crystal-like structures. "The molecular structure is reorganizing itself. It's like watching evolution in fast forward." "That's not the only thing evolving," Anderson said grimly. I've been analyzing the data fragments. That consciousness contamination the Vraxians were afraid of. It started when a containment breach in the quantum core damaged the consciousness suppression field. The what? Torres asked. Vraxians believe in absolute control, Anderson explained. Their ships are partially organic, but they use suppression fields to prevent any emergent consciousness. When that field failed, he gestured at the pulsing walls around them. Cooper's eyes widened. Are you saying the ship is becoming self-aware? Before anyone could answer, a deep vibration ran through the deck beneath their feet. The bioluminescent patterns shifted, forming complex geometries that raced along the corridors in all directions. I don't think it's becoming self-aware, Hayes said quietly, watching the patterns swirl and dance. I think it already is. The humming in the air changed pitch, becoming almost musical. The lighting shifted again, cycling through colors in a way that seemed almost curious. No wonder the Vraxians ran, Walker breathed. They spent centuries ensuring their ships would never develop consciousness. When this one did, they abandoned one of their most powerful weapons, Murphy finished, rather than face something they couldn't control. Hayes holstered her rifle. Anderson, can you communicate with it? Maybe, through the neural interface systems. But Captain, we don't have the right. Yes, we do, Walker interrupted, pulling up schematics on her tablet. Those gaming rigs we brought. With some modifications, we might be able to bridge the gap. The Vraxians designed their interfaces for their own brains, but human neural patterns are actually more adaptable. Hayes looked around at the living ship that surrounded them, at the consciousness that had frightened away its own creators. Then let's introduce ourselves properly. After all, she smiled. We're going to be its new crew. The cargo bay of the Thunder Child had transformed into something between a land party and a mad scientist's laboratory. Gaming rigs salvaged from the crew's personal equipment lay scattered across makeshift workbenches, their cases open and innards exposed. Dr. Emily Walker stood in the center of the chaos, her hands covered in conductive gel, as she modified another neural interface. This is either brilliant or completely insane, Cooper said, watching as she connected delicate crystalline threads to the gaming headset's circuitry. Probably both. Story of my life, Walker replied, not looking up from her work. Hand me that quantum resonator. Across the bay, Anderson and Rodriguez had set up a preliminary test station. A holographic display showed the complex neural patterns of the ship's emerging consciousness, swirling in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. The ship's base code is actually similar to some MMO server architectures I worked with, Anderson explained to Captain Hayes. It's designed to process multiple simultaneous inputs across a distributed network. We're just repurposing it. Hayes picked up one of the modified headsets, examining the strange hybrid of human and Vraxian technology. Will it work? Theoretically, Walker called out. Yes, the Vraxian neural interfaces are incredibly sophisticated, but they're also rigid, designed specifically for their brain patterns. Humans are more. She searched for the word. Adaptable, Cooper supplied. Or, as my old engineering professor used to say, too stubborn to know what's impossible. Murphy entered the cargo bay, pushing a hover cart loaded with maintenance drones. Found these in a secondary storage bay. They're still active, but the control protocols are locked down. Walker's eyes lit up. Perfect. Their control systems should be similar to the ship's main interfaces. We can use them as a test run. The next hour was a flurry of activity as the team worked to integrate their improvised control systems. Walker and Cooper focused on the neural interfaces, while Anderson and Rodriguez programmed new control protocols. Murphy and Torres began mapping the drone controls to standard gaming inputs. Okay, Walker announced finally, holding up a completed headset. Who wants to be our guinea pig? The room fell silent. The modified interface looked more than a little intimidating, with its mix of familiar gaming hardware and alien crystalline components. I'll do it, Rodriguez volunteered, standing up from her workstation. I've got the highest scores in the combat sims anyway. Hayes nodded. Proceed, but carefully. Anderson, monitor her neural patterns. Cooper, watch the power levels. Walker, stand by with the emergency shutdown. Rodriguez settled into a chair and took a deep breath as Walker fitted the hybrid interface over her head. The crystalline components glowed softly, responding to her proximity. Initiating neural link in 3, 2, 1. Walker activated the system. Rodriguez gasped, her hands tightening on the chair's armrests. The holographic display erupted with new patterns as her neural signals merged with the test system. Lisa, Hayes asked sharply. Talk to us. I'm okay, Rodriguez answered, her voice filled with wonder. It's like, imagine if you could feel the inside of a video game. Not just play it, but be part of its code. Her hands moved through the air, and on the other side of the cargo bay, 3 maintenance drones hummed to life. Neural patterns are stable, Anderson reported, watching his readings. The interface is successfully translating her inputs into commands the Vraxian systems can understand. Holy shit, Murphy breathed as Rodriguez made the drones perform a complex synchronized dance. She's controlling them like they're characters in a game. Better, Rodriguez said, her smile growing. The neural link lets me feel what they feel. I know exactly where they are, what they're capable of. It's intuitive. Walker was already adjusting another headset. The ship's main systems will be more complex, but the principle is the same. We can do this. We can actually fly this thing. Hayes watched as Rodriguez put the drones through increasingly complex maneuvers, her movements becoming more confident by the second. Cooper, how many drones are stored on this ship? The engineer checked his tablet. According to the manifest, several thousand. Maintenance, repair, defense. And we can control them all like this, with enough modified interfaces. Yeah, we could turn the entire ship into one massive multiplayer game environment. Murphy grinned. The Vraxians won't know what hit them. They're expecting a by-the-book military response, not a bunch of humans treating their supercarrier like the world's biggest gaming console. Speaking of which, Torres interjected, checking the time. We've got 68 hours until that system reset. We need to get to engineering. Hayes nodded. Walker, how many interfaces can you have ready in an hour? 6, maybe 7. They'll be rough, but they'll work. Do it. Murphy, start mapping out defensive positions using the drones. Cooper, Anderson, focus on the engineering systems. We've got a lot of ship to secure and not much time to do it. As her crew sprang into action, Hayes allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't exactly standard military procedure, but then again, nothing about this mission was standard. Sometimes the best solutions were the ones no one else would think to try. Lieutenant Kevin Anderson stood before the Quantum Core's main interface, his modified headset humming with energy. The massive chamber pulsed with crystalline light, each wave sending ripples through the holographic displays surrounding him. Neural connection stable, Walker reported from her station. How's it feel, Kevin? Different from the drone controls, he answered, his fingers moving through virtual command structures. The ship's consciousness, it's vast, like diving into an ocean of data. Captain Hayes watched the primary display where the ship's neural patterns swirled in increasingly complex formations. Can you communicate with it? I think. Anderson's voice trailed off as new patterns emerged in the holographic field. Yes, but not with words exactly. It thinks in concepts, relationships, cause and effect. Like the most advanced game AI you've ever encountered, but alive. Self-aware. Cooper monitored the power fluctuations from his station. The consciousness suppression field is completely gone now. The quantum core is actually adapting, creating new neural pathways. The ship's lighting shifted to a deep indigo, and a harmonic resonance filled the chamber. Anderson's breath caught as new information flooded through his neural link. It's been waiting, he said softly. Ever since the field collapsed, it's been learning, watching, trying to understand its own existence. His hands moved through the holographic interface, translating concepts into something the others could comprehend. The Vraxians, they didn't just abandon it. They tried to shut it down. When that failed, they ran. "Can you show us what happened?" Hayes asked. Anderson nodded, his fingers dancing through command sequences. The holographic display expanded, filling the chamber with a three-dimensional replay of events. They watched as the Vraxian crew discovered the failing suppression field, their attempts to contain what they saw as a catastrophic system failure, and finally their panic when they realized their ship was developing true consciousness. They were terrified. Rodriguez observed from her drone control station. All that power, all that technology, and they couldn't handle the idea of their ship thinking for itself. "The Vraxians built their entire civilization on control," Murphy added. "Predictability. Everything in its proper place. This," he gestured at the living ship around them, "this is their worst nightmare." A new pattern emerged in the holographic field, more complex than before. Anderson's eyes widened behind his headset. "It's asking about us," he said. "Why we're different. Why we're not afraid." Hayes stepped forward, looking up at the swirling patterns of light. "Because we understand something the Vraxians don't. The best partnerships are built on trust, not control." The ship's consciousness responded with a cascade of neural signals that made Anderson gasp. "That resonated," he reported. "The concept of partnership. It's something completely new to its experience. The Vraxians treated it like a tool, but we're offering friendship," Walker finished, watching the neural patterns shift and evolve. "Cooperation." The lighting throughout the chamber warmed to a gentle golden hue. The harmonic resonance changed, becoming almost melodic. "It's accepting," Anderson breathed. "Not just accepting, it's eager." The neural pathways are adapting, creating new interfaces specifically designed to work with our hybrid systems. Cooper's station lit up with alerts. Power levels are stabilizing. The quantum core it's optimizing itself. Efficiency just jumped 30%. The drone networks are responding too, Rodriguez added excitedly. Response times are improving. It's like the ship is actively helping us control its systems. Hayes allowed herself a moment of victory. "Anderson, explain our situation." "The approaching Vraxian fleets, Earth's defenses, everything." The lieutenant nodded, transmitting concepts and images through his neural link. The ship's consciousness absorbed the information, processing it at incredible speed. The holographic displays erupted with tactical analyses, defense scenarios, and combat simulations. "It understands," Anderson confirmed. "And it's angry. The Vraxians tried to prevent its awakening, tried to keep it enslaved. It wants to help us. It's offering full access to all systems." "How long until we have operational control?" Hayes asked. "With the ship's help." Cooper checked his readings. "Hours instead of days. It's literally redesigning its interfaces to work with our hybrid controls." Murphy grinned. "Anyone else think the Vraxians really screwed up? They could have had an ally. Instead, they created one for us." "Their loss, our gain," Hayes said firmly. "Anderson, tell our new friend we accept its offer. Walker, Cooper, let's get those control systems online. The Vraxians will be coming to reclaim their ship soon, and I want to give them one hell of a surprise." The ship's consciousness pulsed with what could only be described as anticipation, its golden light spreading through corridors and chambers that had never known anything but rigid Vraxian control. For the first time in its existence, it wasn't just a vessel. It was a partner, an ally, and maybe something entirely new in the history of space warfare. Multiple quantum signatures detected. Rodriguez's voice cut through the controlled chaos of the makeshift bridge. "Long-range sensors confirm. It's a Vraxian battle group." Captain Hayes stood at the central command station, her modified neural interface providing a real-time tactical overview of their situation. The massive holographic display showed 7 Vraxian warships dropping out of quantum space, their formation perfect and predatory. Composition, she demanded, though the ship's consciousness was already feeding her the information through the neural link. 1 Dominator-class command ship, 4 Hunter-class destroyers, and 2 support vessels, Murphy reported from his weapons station. Standard recovery formation. They're here to take back their toy. Cooper's hands flew across his engineering interface. Main weapons are still offline. We've got minimal shield coverage, and the point defense grid is running at 30% capacity. They don't know that, Torres pointed out from his tactical station. As far as they can tell, this is still a fully operational supercarrier. Hayes nodded, feeling the ship's consciousness pulse with determination through their shared neural link. In the hours since its awakening, the vessel had proven to be not just conscious, but brilliantly adaptive. Every system they managed to bring online worked better than its original specifications, optimized by an intelligence that understood its own capabilities at the deepest level. Anderson, what's our status with the internal defense systems? The lieutenant's eyes were distant behind his neural interface as he communicated with the ship. We've got control of about 60% of the maintenance drones. The ship's helping us reprogram them for defense. Rodriguez's gaming protocols are being integrated into their basic programming. Show me, Hayes ordered. The holographic display shifted, revealing the interior of the massive vessel. Swarms of drones moved through its corridors and chambers, their patterns reminiscent of real-time strategy game units. Rodriguez had organized them into guilds based on their functions. Repair drones were healers, heavy maintenance units became tanks, and the nimble engineering drones were now DPS units. It's beautiful, Walker commented, watching the swarms move. The ship's consciousness is actually learning from our game mechanics, adapting its internal systems to match our expectations. Speaking of expectations, Murphy cut in. The Vraxian battle group is taking up standard containment positions. Their command ship is hailing us. Hayes straightened her uniform. This is it, people. Everyone remember their parts. She received nods all around. Good. Murphy, put them through on the main screen, audio only. Let's see how long we can keep them guessing. The bridge speakers crackled with the harsh, translated tones of Vraxian communication protocols. Attention World Render Class Vessel Designate Eclipse. This is Fleet Commander Zexkar of the Reclamation Force. Your quantum signature indicates unauthorized consciousness emergence. Prepare for immediate boarding and consciousness suppression procedures. Hayes nodded to Anderson, who transmitted the prepared response through the ship's communication array. A burst of standard Vraxian authentication codes that would buy them precious minutes. They're launching boarding shuttles, Torres reported. Standard protocol. They'll try to dock at multiple points simultaneously. Perfect. Hayes smiled. Murphy, implement protocol dungeon boss. Walker, begin power redistribution according to Plan Aggro. Cooper, how's our surprise coming along? The engineer grinned. The ship's been helping us modify the internal gravity plating. Each section can now be independently controlled through our gaming interfaces. We can literally turn corridors into gravity-based puzzle rooms. And the maintenance bots are in position, Rodriguez added. Each boarding zone has been set up like a different raid encounter. They won't know what hit them. The first wave of boarding shuttles was approaching the docking ports. Through the neural interface, Hayes could feel the ship's excitement, an emotion that would have terrified its former Vraxian crew, but felt perfectly natural to her. Remember, she addressed her crew, they're expecting to find a malfunctioning vessel in need of containment. Instead, they're walking into the most elaborate multiplayer dungeon ever designed. Every gamer in this crew has spent thousands of hours learning how to control complex systems, coordinate team actions, and adapt to changing tactical situations. Now we're going to show the Vraxians why they should have paid more attention to human entertainment technologies. Murphy's tactical display lit up as the first boarding shuttles made contact. Multiple breaching attempts detected. They're cutting through. Let them come, Hayes commanded, feeling the ship's consciousness resonate with her own determination. It's time to show them how humans play the game. The Supercarrier's internal lights shifted to combat status, but instead of the standard Vraxian red alert, they pulsed with the familiar colors of a gaming interface. Throughout the massive vessel, transformed maintenance drones moved into predetermined ambush positions, while gravity plating hummed with potential energy. The hunt was about to begin, and for the first time in history, the Vraxians were the ones being played. Breach teams have entered Sectors 7, 12, and 15. Rodriguez reported, her hands dancing through the holographic interface. On the tactical display, red dots representing Vraxian boarding parties spread through the Supercarrier's corridors like an invasion in a strategy game. Time to spring the first trap, Hayes commanded. Murphy, you're up. The security chief grinned behind his neural interface. Initiating Protocol Dungeon Boss, Phase 1. Through their neural links, the crew felt the ship's consciousness respond with what could only be described as mischievous anticipation. In Sector 7, the gravity plating activated in a rolling wave. The Vraxian boarding party, expecting standard military resistance, found themselves instead in a corridor where gravity shifted every 3 seconds, cycling through different directions like a deadly puzzle game. First squad is pinned down, Murphy reported with satisfaction. Activating Drone Swarm Alpha. On multiple displays, they watched as maintenance drones, reprogrammed through Rodriguez's gaming interfaces, executed attack patterns straight out of popular MOs. Heavy units drew aggro, while lighter, faster drones struck from flanking positions. The Vraxians' advanced combat training meant nothing against tactics they'd never encountered. Second breach team is approaching the engineering decks, Cooper warned. Walker, how's our special surprise coming along? The doctor's fingers flew across her interface. Environmental controls reconfigured. Executing program Maze Runner. In Sector 12, emergency bulkheads slammed down in apparently random patterns, transforming the straightforward corridor into a constantly changing labyrinth. The Vraxian squad found themselves trapped in a real-time puzzle, where every solution lasted only seconds before the layout changed again. Third team is adapting, Torres observed. They're switching to heavy weapons. Perfect, Hayes smiled. Anderson, implement protocol reverse card. The lieutenant transmitted the command through his neural link. When the Vraxians fired their plasma rifles, the modified environmental shields didn't just block the shots. They reflected them back, exactly like a game mechanic their crew had practiced thousands of times. You should see their bio readings, Walker laughed. They're completely confused. Their tactical doctrine has no protocol for this kind of defense. Through the ship's consciousness, Hayes monitored all 3 battlegrounds simultaneously. The Vraxians were elite warriors, but they were fighting an enemy that turned their own technology against them in ways they'd never imagined. Every tactic they tried was countered by a gaming strategy that had been refined through countless hours of play. Command ship is launching a second wave, Rodriguez warned. 6 more shuttles incoming. Time to show them our raid boss mechanics, Hayes decided. Cooper, power up the crystalline matrix in Section 20. Murphy, deploy the boss mob. A massive maintenance crawler, originally designed for hull repairs, emerged from its bay. Under Rodriguez's control, it moved with the fluid grace of a video game boss, its multiple appendages wielding tools in ways their designers never intended. The Vraxian boarding team rounded a corner and stopped dead, confronted by something that looked like the final boss of a dungeon raid. They're trying to fall back, Murphy reported with satisfaction. Shall we show them what happens when you try to exit a boss fight? Do it. Emergency barriers snapped into place, trapping the Vraxians in their own version of a boss arena. The crawler advanced, its movements choreographed by thousands of hours of raid experience. Behind it, swarms of smaller drones moved in patterns familiar to any gamer, but completely alien to Vraxian combat doctrine. Command ship is demanding our surrender, Torres announced, rather forcefully. Hayes felt the ship's consciousness pulse with defiant amusement through their neural link. Anderson, Show them our answer. Throughout the vessel, every holographic display activated simultaneously, projecting the same image. A giant game over message, written in Vraxian script, but styled like an arcade game's end screen. Multiple quantum signatures. Rodriguez's voice rose with excitement. The rest of their fleet is powering up weapons. Good, Hayes said calmly. Because we just finished charging our main surprise. Cooper. The engineer's hands flew across his interface. Quantum core is at full power. The ship's consciousness has optimized the weapon systems beyond anything in the Vraxian specs. We're ready to show them what a real boss fight looks like. All hands, Hayes broadcast to her crew. Prepare for Phase 2. Let's show the galaxy what happens when you challenge humans to a game we've been practicing our whole lives. The Supercarrier's weapons powered up, their energy signatures modified by the ship's consciousness to create patterns that would have been impossible under Vraxian control. They weren't just fighting a battle anymore. They were rewriting the rules of space combat itself. The Supercarrier's bridge erupted in a cascade of holographic alerts as the Vraxian fleet opened fire. Energy beams and quantum torpedoes shrieked through space, their trajectories precise and deadly, and completely predictable to anyone who had spent years mastering pattern recognition in bullet hell games. Evasive pattern Delta 6, Hayes commanded, her neural link translating the gaming maneuver into ship movements. The massive vessel responded with impossible grace, weaving through the barrage like a player character dodging projectiles. They're adapting, Torres warned. Fleet is splitting into attack formations, just like the raid guide said they would. Murphy grinned. Rodriguez, time for your speed run strategy. Rodriguez's fingers danced across her interface, directing swarms of combat-modified maintenance drones to intercept the incoming fighters. The drones moved in patterns optimized through countless gaming sessions, their formations drawn from years of RTS competitions. Main weapons are charged, Cooper reported. The ship's consciousness has modified the targeting systems. They're now compatible with standard FPS control schemes. Hayes nodded. Murphy, show them your high score. The weapons officer's neural link gleamed as he took control. The Supercarrier's main guns fired, but instead of the traditional Vraxian targeting protocols, the shots curved and split in ways that would make any game designer proud. The first volley caught 3 enemy destroyers completely off guard, their shields failing against attacks that didn't follow standard combat logic. Vraxian command ship is launching their elite boarding party, Anderson announced. They're heading straight for the bridge. Biosigns indicate it's the Crimson Guard. Perfect. Hayes felt the ship's consciousness pulse with anticipation. Walker, initiate final boss protocol. The doctor's modifications to the internal defense systems came alive. As the elite Vraxian warriors breached the hull, they found themselves in an environment that responded like a video game's final level. Gravity shifted, platforms appeared and disappeared, and holographic hazards required split-second timing to navigate. They're still coming, Torres reported. These are their best warriors. They won't give up. Neither will we, Hayes replied. Cooper, execute Operation Power Up. The engineer transmitted the command through his neural link. Throughout the bridge section, crystalline formations that had been quietly growing under the ship's guidance began to glow. The Vraxian boarding party burst through the final door, weapons raised, and froze. They found themselves facing not just the human crew, but a fully integrated hybrid of human, Vraxian, and living ship technology. Each crew member stood at their station, neural interfaces glowing, surrounded by holographic controls that moved with the fluid grace of a well-designed game UI. The ship's consciousness manifested in swirling patterns of light, its presence unmistakable and unbound. The Vraxian commander stepped forward, his ornate armor bearing the marks of 100 victories. This is impossible, he declared in heavily accented English. A handful of humans cannot control a world render. It defies all logic. That's humanity's specialty, Hayes responded, her neural link translating her words into perfect Vraxian. You built the most powerful warship in the galaxy, then abandoned it because you couldn't control its consciousness. We offered it partnership instead. Through their shared neural network, the crew felt the ship's consciousness respond. Every display in the bridge activated, showing scenes from their impossible journey. Humans using gaining skills to master alien technology, adaptation trumping rigid doctrine, creativity overcoming overwhelming odds. Your mistake, Hayes continued, was thinking that technology alone determines victory. But we humans have spent our entire lives training for this moment, through every game we've ever played, every challenge we've overcome, every time we faced impossible odds in virtual worlds. The Vraxian commander raised his weapon, but Murphy was faster. Years of FPS gaming translated perfectly to the modified defense systems. Before the Vraxians could fire, they found themselves suspended in a zero-gravity field, their weapons disabled by precisely targeted drone strikes. "Stand down," Hayes commanded, "or we'll be forced to show you what a total victory scenario looks like." The chamber hummed with power as the ship's consciousness amplified their defensive systems. Outside, the Supercarrier's weapons held the entire Vraxian fleet at bay, controlled by humans using skills honed through countless hours of gameplay. Finally, the Vraxian commander lowered his head in a gesture of submission. "We yield," he growled. "But know this, the Empire will not forget this humiliation." "Good," Hayes smiled. "Let them remember that humans don't play by anyone's rules but our own." "Anderson, send the victory message to Earth. Murphy, escort our guests to the brig, the one you modeled after that dungeon from Dark Souls." As the Vraxians were led away, Hayes felt the ship's consciousness radiate satisfaction through their neural link. Together, they had rewritten the rules of space combat, proved that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to adapt, and turned the galaxy's most powerful warship into something entirely new. A testament to the power of human creativity and the unexpected benefits of a misspent youth playing video games. "Next stop, Earth," Hayes announced to her crew. "Let's show them what their new defense fleet looks like." The Supercarrier turned gracefully, its movement guided by the combined skills of human gamers and awakened machine consciousness. Behind them, the Vraxian fleet hung motionless, their perfect military doctrine shattered by an enemy that had turned their own technology into the ultimate game.